you have, and we'll go from there. Okay? So let's do this. Well, how did you start? Lindsay Wild, step 1.
Divide by 3.
So when you divided by 3, did you get something that looks like this?
Yes.
All right, step 2, Zach Bond.
I added 2.
You did exactly the right thing because you are making room for a number to be added here. Beautiful. Jordan, what did you add to both sides? And how did you get 25? Bingo. Half of 10 is 5. Squared is 25. Added to both sides. Savannah, this is the perfect square. What perfect square is it?
X squared plus 5.
X plus 5, quantity squared.
Right.
Don't put the square here. Yeah, I think you just said it wrong. Yeah. And that equals 27. Next step, Mr. Brokaw, what'd you do next? Square rooted both sides. And when you square rooted both sides, you said x plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 27. So x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 27. Did anybody catch there's a little extra here though? Erica?
To break down the 27.
27 breaks down. 27 breaks down into 3 root 3. So your answer, full credit answer is right there.
So what happens if we just let the other
You're
27?
going to lose some credit. Not a lot, but you're going to lose some.
I'm going to have to break something.
Okay? All right. All right, here we go. We are now on the back of page 5 in the note sheet, and it's part 5. And we have the last part of our little solving section. So we are going to talk about another method of solving equations. Now let's catch up here. Monday we talked about graphing, solving by graphing. Tuesday we talked about solving by taking the square root of both sides or by completing the square. Wednesday, yesterday, we talked about solving with the quadratic formula. Today we're talking about solving by squaring both sides. Not square rooting, which is what you did here, right? You square rooted here. We're talking about squaring both sides. And why would we do that? Because the problems have radicals in them. We need that x to get out of the radical. So we square. What is the square root of x plus 2 squared? What's this going to equal? X plus 2. And what's this going to equal? Now, is that a solvable equation? Very easy to solve, right? So let's see, 2x equals 3 and x equals 3/2. You okay with that? Now, here is the bad news. When you do this operation, squaring both sides, you must check your answer. Because sometimes you'll get an answer that is bad. It doesn't work. And you never know. So you have to check every time you square both sides. So what do I mean by check? I mean, go back to the original equation, the thing that's written on the paper, the very original equation. And every time you see an x, plug in 3/2. So when I plug in 3/2, 3/2 is 1.5. So I'm going to plug that in and see what happens. What's 1.5 plus 2? 3.5? What is 1.5 times 3? Go ahead and use your calculators. What's 1.5 times 3 minus 1? this is 4.5, minus 1 would be 3.5. So does that check out? Yeah. So we have a good answer here. Everything's hunky-dory. There you go. I promise it's not always going to work. Next. Do you think we should square both sides to solve this? Yes. When you square both sides, though, be very careful. See that 2? It has to be squared. So you're going to have 4 times what? X plus 1 equal to 9. So 4x plus 4 equals 9. 4x equals 5 and x equals 5/4. Now we're going to check it. And if you have a calculator, feel free to use it. In fact, I would suggest it probably with this. I'm putting in 5/4. So 5/4 plus 1. I'm going to square root that. Times 2. Oh my gosh, it works. I know you're thinking, how come I have to check, Mrs. Ford? It's such a pain in the butt. You'll see in a minute. All right, getting this put in. 5 divided by 4 plus 1. Now, after you hit the plus 1, say equals. And then hit square root. On your graphing calculator, do you know how to get the square root?
Yeah,
Second, x squared, yeah. And then whatever you got there. It equals times 2, and it should equal 3. Did you guys remember you have late arrival tomorrow?
What time?
So first period prayer begins at 8:35.
What? Let's go.
that's nice.
Prayer begins at 8:35, which means you need to be here before that. All right, here we go. If you're having a hard time checking, I'll come around and help you, or you can bring it up to me in a minute. But first, let's get through these problems. This is much harder. We have to do it the same way. We square both sides. Notice the parentheses. I've used them in every example. Get in the habit of putting parentheses on both sides. You're squaring the parentheses. This side is 5 minus x. But what's going to happen over here? What am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to FOIL. Very good. I'm going to have to FOIL. This is x plus 1 times x plus 1. Now, I can't remember if we FOILed yet this year or not. Do you remember how to FOIL?
Yeah.
First, outside, inside, last, right? That's what FOIL stands for. So first times first, outsides, insides, and last. So I have 5 minus x equals x squared plus 2x plus 1. What kind of an equation is that? What do we call equations that are x squared? It starts with a q. Quadratic. We need to get that equal to 0. So we're gonna take these guys and move them over. So we're gonna subtract 5 and add x. So I'm gonna have x squared plus 3x minus 4. Is that what you got when you moved everything over? Now, what am I going to do with that? X squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. How am I going to solve that quadratic equation? I could use the quadratic formula. I could complete the square. Or, if it factors, I could factor it. Now, I want to say something here. You have all of those options. I would not choose to complete the square. Can anybody think ahead? Why would I not complete the square?
If you divide 3 by 2 and then square it, it's not going to be a 3 number.
Exactly. Half of 3 is going to be a fraction or a decimal, so I'm just going to have yicky numbers if I complete the square. So I probably wouldn't do that. Could I use my quadratic formula very easily? Yep. So if that's what you like to do and that's what you're comfortable with, then that's what you're going to do. This one does also factor. So those of you that remember how to factor or like to factor, good at factoring, whatever, you could factor this. And by factor, I mean like unfoil it. If that confuses you, then you're not going to do it that way. You're going to use the quadratic formula because everybody knows that and can use it real easily. I get 2 answers. What are the 2 answers I get?
4 and then negative 4.
Watch it. Negative 4 and 1. Remember, you're going to set these equal to 0 and solve. So that's how we get negative 4 and 1. Now, what do I have to do? Check them. Both. So here we go. My original problem was this. So I'm going to put in negative 4. What's this? So that's going to be 9. What's the square root of 9? Uh-oh, wait a minute. Did that one work? No. I didn't make any mistakes. We didn't make any mistakes. We worked everything perfectly, but negative 4 just doesn't check. That's called an extraneous root. And the word extraneous root means it's an answer that just doesn't check. You didn't make any mistakes, but you have to throw it out. So this one's thrown out. Now I'm going to try 1. Go back to my original and put in 1. What's 5 minus 1? 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Does that check?
Yes.
Yes. Now, gang, please understand that sometimes both answers work, sometimes one of them works, and sometimes none of them work. So you have to check every single answer if your step was to square both sides. If you squared both sides, you need to check your work. That problem took almost the whole board here. Any question about that? Okay, one more. Jack, you okay? All right, one more. Here we go. We should definitely move the 5 over. All right, now what? Square both sides. Now, in this one, I'm going to give you an option. If you wanted to, could you divide both sides by 2? Now, it's not going to matter in your answer, but could we divide both sides by 2? And then we wouldn't have, we'd have smaller numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and do that this time. Again, you don't have to do this. The thing we love the most about math is there's always options. So this time I'm doing this. I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I end up with a little smaller equation. Now I'm going to square both sides. So what happens over here? X minus 3. What happens here? So it looks like x equals 4. Now let's check it. This is the original problem. Okay? So I'm going to put 4 in it. I always go back to the original problem. What's 4 minus 3? 1. And the square root of 1 is 1. Times 2 is 2. Plus 5 is not 3. Right? Does that answer check? No, it's extraneous. It's the only option I had. So what's the answer to this question?
No solution.
No solution. Have you seen the empty set symbol before? That's the empty set symbol. That means no solution. So you can either use that symbol or you can physically write no solution. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at your homework from last night. Anybody have a question? Somebody had a question? Good.
I did.
Good question. You should get some answer. All right. Who had a question about a homework problem? Rachel, what are you doing?
I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't know. It would seem to me like you would be like glued to every word I said since you missed so much school. All right. Who had a question about a homework problem? Nobody had a question about our homework last night. All right, here's what's going to happen then.
She had a question.
She had her hand
Oh,
up.
who had a hand up? I didn't see it. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you, Ms. McDowell. What's your question?
Number 21.
Number 21. Let's take a look at number 21. Okay, it says use the quadratic formula. 3x plus 4 equals x squared. So, how do we have to start this? Please do not jump in with your quadratic formula until you do what with this equation? Set it equal to 0. So it doesn't matter which way you go, I mean whether you get the 0 on the right or the left, but you've got to get it set equal to 0. So I like to keep my x squared positive, so I'm going to leave my x squared there and move over my 3x and move over my 4. So my equation, subtracted 3x from both sides, subtracted 4 from both sides. So now my equation is set equal to 0. Quadratic formula, what's my A?
1,
B?
-3,
And C.
-4.
Perfect. Now we're gonna plug it into the quadratic formula. Here we go. X equals negative b. Now b is already negative, so when I make it negative b, it's going to become positive. The square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Got it? So x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of, all right, what have we got under there? 9 plus 16? And 9 plus 16 is 25. And the square root of 25 is 5. So we have 3 plus or minus 5 over 2. Now this is one of those that you have to take on farther. What's 3 plus 5? Divided by 2, 4. So one of your answers is 4. What's 3 minus 5? Negative 2 divided by 2, negative 1. So there are your two answers. Taylor, does that make sense? Everybody okay? All right. On Monday, we are going to have a quiz. And the quiz on Monday is going to have several problems on it. You can guess, right? Guess what you're going to have to do. Solve an equation by graphing. Now, the reason we're having this quiz on Monday is you have now one more weekend to get what? A graphing calculator. All right? Because on Monday, you're going to have to do that. We're not sharing calculators. You're going to walk in the door with a calculator. So you're going to have to solve by graphing. You're going to have to solve by completing the square, which you just did. So hopefully, you know, those will be great. We'll clean out anything up tomorrow that you still have a question about. You're going to have to solve an equation by the quadratic formula, which means you're going to have it memorized. Let me write, yes. Now I know what you're singing the song out loud. Sing the song to yourself. I'll write the formula down one more time. And you're going to have to solve an equation by squaring both sides. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
All right, so let's start practicing right now. We got a couple minutes, don't we? What time's the spell ring? We got plenty of time. Okay. So, let me say one more time. You are going to have to solve an equation by graphing, quadratic formula, completing the square, squaring both sides. Squaring both sides is what we just talked about today. So those four options, which one do you want to practice? Graphing. All right, let's solve an equation by graphing. I wanted to see if this is going to work. I just made it up, so I want to make sure it works. Yeah. I want to change this to a -2. Okay. Now, here we go. We're going to solve this by graphing. Actually, the equation will look like this. But when you put it into your calculator, you're going to put it in like this, right? Because when we go to graph something, we press the y equals button. Right here where my finger is, y equals. And then we put in this equation. Now, we talked about this the other day, but we'll talk about it again in case you didn't have a calculator or you weren't paying attention. To put in the cube, you're going to type x, and x is from your variable button. And where is your variable button? second row. Second button in the second row. So you press it. Then you press this button, which is right over here under the clear, where my finger's pointing here. That's how you raise to a power. Type 3, because that's the power you want. And then minus, oh shoot, I already have the equation in there. And then minus 7x squared. And then minus 2. Okay? Now, after you get the equation in, go ahead and press graph. And I don't know what kind of window you have set up. I have the standard window. And the standard window, remember, is for both of them, x and y, it's negative 10, 10, and 1 for x and y. The standard window shows a picture that looks like this. Now, that is perfectly okay. I know what some of you are thinking. Ooh, I'd like to see this part down here. That part's missing. But really, we don't need to see that part, because when we're solving, what are we looking for? Where it crosses the x-axis. And can I see that point right now? So if you want to mess with your window, go ahead. But if you can see that point right there, that's all that really matters. You need to see that point. Now, do you remember what to do after that? So second calc. You can't keep going through this, so you need to write it down or somehow memorize it. Second calc. Go down to 0 and press enter. You should see your cursor. Your cursor needs to be set somewhere over here. So move your cursor using your arrow buttons, and you'll either use the right arrow or the left arrow. And you need to move it, and you just gotta keep moving it till it's over here somewhere, and press enter. Then move it so it's over here somewhere. Press enter. And then move it so it's as close to this as you can get it, and press enter. I got 7.0403498. Now, what I want to do now is, I want to give you another problem to work on, and I want to help those of you that still have calculator issues. So, of what's left, do you want a quadratic formula, completing the square, or a square both sides? Square both sides? Let me pull one off your homework tonight. Those of you that have the calculator figured out, solve that. That's actually a homework problem tonight. Your homework is this sheet tonight. The sheet I gave you yesterday, or whenever I gave this to you. This extra practice sheet. If you have a calculator issue, get up here. Turn that off. Thank you. Bring up your calculator issue.